Hello, Dawn Butler here, Dinky Doodle Designs, and I'm in the Katy Sue headquarters. So thank you very much, and firstly, Happy New Year to everybody, because it is a very cold and windy January outside, but the lights are on and we're nice and warm inside, and we're going to take you through not one, but 3 cakes. I don't know whether you can see behind me what we've got going on, but we have got a nice quilted one just there. We've got a rectangular knitted kind of baby style cake just there, and then we've also got like a round sort of like a paint pot with flowers in the top just there. So we're going to take you through all 3 of those. I'm using some of the Katy Sue moulds and we'll go through those in a moment. And also, for a change, is it nice to see a demo with some real cake in? Because we're going to take you through some carving first. Now, all 3 of these handbags are using my new carry cake kit. Now, I don't know whether you guys have seen this yet. Of course, it isn't essential at all to be using one of these kits to make a handbag cake, but I think you'll agree, when you've finished watching this demo, you will see just how easy they are. So this is the kit. Let's take a look. So you'll find it comes in a bag like so. And then on the back of the bag, it's basically got marked with which one of the kits that you've got. So as you can see, there's a round base, a rectangular base, and then also an oval as well. So this one's the oval kit here. It has a link, by the way, to YouTube where the tutorials are, but of course you can keep referring back to this one as well. Now, the one that I've got in here is the oval base. You just move everything so it's a little more central. There we are. So you can basically see that it's a piece of black acrylic, so it's a food safe plastic, and it's got 2 slots in it. Can you see there are 2 holes cut in just there? I know it's against black background, so you might not see it too easily. And each kit will come with a base, and that will be in the shape that we spoke about. And then also, get in here somewhere. Here we go. Put that down there to one side. And then also 2 supports. So can you see there? It's basically, if I put it that way, you can see it a bit better. So it's like a long arm. It's got a keyhole in the top, and then it's got a foot at the bottom. And there's 2 of those. You will then also get a handle. You can see that one there. Looks like a smiley face from here. So the handle there, and then this goes into the keyhole and allows you to pick up your cake. So before we even start carving, I have got, let's show you the cake again. So this is an ordinary Genoese vanilla sponge just there. You can see it's a sort of standard width, and I've got 4 of those, and I've just used the template of the oval to cut round and cut that out. Well, thanks guys, they're putting the link on the bottom for me that you can get these handbag kits from www.dinkydoodle.co.uk, and for 24 hours only, I'm going to give you £3 off these kits if you just enter the coupon code Katy Sue when you check out. So what I'm going to do first is I've got my platform on top of my 4 layers of cake, and I'm going to push down nice and straight into the slot. I don't know whether you guys want to come up to a shot from the flat. Perfect, thank you guys. If I step to one side you can see it a bit better because I've got a black apron on, but there's the foot look. So the foot here is at the top, the keyhole was facing down, and I'm just going to push into the cake. Now, I've not filled the cake, I've not carved the cake, I've not done anything. So again, in it goes. We step back a bit more. Push, and in they are. Now the cake at the moment is upside down. I'm going to turn that the right way round, continue to push, and can you see now that the top of my handles, can you see them just poking up? If I lift that ever so slightly against the background there, look, can you see? Just poking up just there. That's brilliant, thank you guys. So you can see them now poking out of the top. Now, The reason that this works, if I flip this back, can you see that's a perfect shot? That the feet here are sticking out of the bottom of this base. And that basically means that these feet are larger than the hole in the base, meaning that they can't go anywhere. Not only does that provide support for our cake, but it also means that these are off the table surface, so none of your cake is actually touching anything that it shouldn't. So flip that back, and that's now the right way up. So we're going to start carving our cake, but before we do, let me show you the handle and how that goes into place. If I turn this way, hopefully you can see I'm just going to hook in and hook in again, like so. And that allows me to do that. See? Told you it was easy peasy. So literally, because those feet are too big, that's pulling upwards, and because the handle is also pulling upwards, that takes the weight of a cake. And we've got 4 layers here, and we haven't even finished with Ganache and covered it in sugar paste, but these will take quite a substantial weight. So you can fill these to your heart's content. Now, I'm not going to fill my cake today with any buttercream, but you could do. I will be ganaching it, but I always carve my cakes before I fill them. And the reason being is, if I filled it, it would probably start to slide. Although thankfully we've got a great guide here to stop anything from moving anywhere. So, get yourself out a rather large knife. Serrated is ideal, but I forgot mine, so I'm borrowing Katy Sue's. And I'm going to take, in essence, 4 simple cuts. So across the front, across the back, and down both sides. Now, I've done a little handbag carving guide for you, and you'll find that on the Katy Sue website. And I've done a couple of different designs. This is what I call a medium handbag, and if I'm using the large rectangle, you can also carve that into a bag shape, and I've called that the large handbag. And what I've done for you there is actually measure the exact sizes and exact shape that your cake will be, so you can cut out those as templates and carve too, but it also gives you a useful reference guide to use in the future when you want to look at carving a handbag cake. So you'll find those online on the Katy Sue website. So, first things first, I'm going to turn this sideways so that you can see what's happening down the side. I'm going to take my knife at a 45-degree angle, and you only ever try and cut one piece of cake at a time. So, I'm just going to cut. Can you see how the knife is not touching this second part of cake? It's only doing the top, like so. I'm going to turn it round because I'm left-handed and go again. So, don't cut your fingers off, folks. And it's just following that oval shape, just basically cutting front and back, okay? We're not going to worry about anything else just yet. So we should see from the top that we've cut quite close to our handles, but kind of kept that oval shape, okay? The crust on the top of the cake is a really good indicator as to whether everything is nice and even. So I use that to see whether I think my cake is in the right shape at all, because it wants to be the same sort of distance all the way around. Now I'm very, very gently just going to make sure that that is as smooth as possible, and all I'm doing is just trimming a little bit off this sort of corner here, this front section here, ever so gently, just wants carving a little rounder. But you notice how I've not touched the bottom 2 layers of cake at all. Loads of people, when they're carving, just carve and carve and carve and carve, and when they wanted a cake to feed about 30 people, they end up with a cupcake at the end because they've just gone for it. So what you need to try and do is not carve too much cake. So I only ever carve the top bits, and the bottom should be the size of cake that I want it to end up with, so that I never really lose all of that shape and size. Now then, I want to take this cake tapered from here and go outwards, so I'm going to do exactly that. I'm going to start by the handle, and then I'm going to cut down towards that bottom piece, so I'm not going to lose that at all. So can you see how I've gone from the handle down at an angle, but look, it's still the same size when we get to the bottom. I'll do exactly the same the other side. So go nice and close to the handle, keep it in a straight diagonal down towards the bottom. And we should see then, look, we've got lovely angles, so we've kept that side of the cake nice and sharp, and we should then have a really nice sort of looking handbag basically. If there's anything else now that I think needs more work, I'm not going to cut it at all. What I'm actually going to do is just gently rub it, and you'll feel that there's little bits that might have a bit of a lump in or aren't quite right the shape, but it stops you carving. So I rub my cake all the time just to make sure that I've got the shape right. And carving, folks, is as easy as that. We've carved our handbag shape already. Now, if you were going to fill it, can you see where the line is on my sponge? That tells me where the different sizes are. And look, I would just take that off. Take that off, and I'd put that at 12 o'clock. The next piece off at 1 o'clock. The next piece at 2. The next piece at 3. Never rotate them, never flip them. Just lay them as they came off. Then fill it, and then put them back in the order that you took them off in. Then hopefully, when it all goes back together, it'll be exactly the right place. Okay, like so. Now you could decide if you want to just use 3 layers of cake here, depends on your design. You could, I don't know if you've ever made cake pop mix, but cake pop mix basically is ganache with the little bit of crumbs, and it wants to be only really, I would say, for all of this cake that's here, the offcuts, probably only a dessert spoonful of ganache that goes with it. So crumb this up into a bowl, make cake pop mix, and you could add extra height here for the top of your bag. I prefer that than using Rice Krispie treats, because I just think when you go to cut a slice of that, no one thinks they've been shortchanged. If you've ever tried cake pop mix with a ganache, it's the most amazing chocolate truffle. And like I said, nobody thinks they've been shortchanged out of a slice of cake. So I would do that with that. Okay, so we're ready to start ganashing, but before I do, you may have noticed that I've been carving on a bit of plastic. And the reason that I do this at home, it's not because Katy Sue's told me I can't make a mess, and it's not because we think Dexter's about to arrive in the building and we're doing a crime scene. It's because I can literally fold the bags over, and then I can just get rid of that. Or if that's full of my cake crumbs, that can go straight into the freezer and be ready to use as cake pop mix. But it just means that everything stays nice and tidy. Ta-da! Right then, let's take a look at some ganashing. So I'll leave that there. Now we've already heated, I'm hoping that it's still soft enough, but I've heated up. In fact, I overheated to make sure that it was going to be okay. But basically, we've got a bowl of chocolate ganache here. And for those that haven't used this before, it's basically a mixture of usually a dark chocolate along with a cream. And you heat up your cream and then add your chunks of chocolate to it, melt them together, and it's basically an excellent cement. I absolutely love it for novelty cakes. I think it's absolutely essential. And when I go to ganache something, I always use a cranked handled palette knife, so you can see that it's got a bend to it. And I put my ganache on the back of that palette knife. And then always go for the sides first, never the top, because if you use the top, then no one will be able to put their hands on it to turn it round. But we've got a handbag and we can stick a handle on it, and this makes an excellent tool for turning your cake round and ganaching it. And because we can take this handle on and off, we can use it as often as we like and as often as we need to. So we can take it off when we're covering it with sugar paste so that it doesn't get in the way, but we can use it at this point to help us turn our cake. And because it's on those little feet, it really is very, very useful to turn around. So we're just ganaching all the sides. Don't worry too much yet about where it's going. Just get a good covering on. Like so. This basically just wants to be a crumb coat to begin with. If you need to put more on afterwards, then you can do. Loads of people say to me, Dawn, my ganache, I just can't do it. It follows the cake round. The cake crumbs start to go everywhere. Everything's, kind of going wrong. It's looking a mess. Okay, there's a couple of things going wrong with that one. One is that your ganache probably isn't heated enough. So if it's still a little solid, then obviously it's going to start dragging all your cake crumbs with it. More often than not, the problem is because you've not actually got enough ganache on the cake. So if you put a nice dollop on there, when I'm paddling backwards and forwards, I should only be touching ganache. I should never actually be touching cake. And that's usually what the problem is. If your cake is exceptionally soft, then I would consider chilling it or even freezing it. And don't worry, you don't spoil your cake. Cake is absolutely amazing having been frozen. And quite often I do think it tastes better, and it'll certainly keep the moisture in there. The only thing is, when you deal with ganache on a frozen cake, you're going to chill your ganache pretty quickly. So you do need to move quite quick, or have a bowl of hot boiling water next to you just to keep heating up your palette knife and giving it a good going over. Okay, so we've kind of given this a good coat of ganache. What I would expect to be doing with that is letting it set for a little while. You can pop that in the fridge just to let it chill down, and then we need to smooth it over. Having said that, we're using some great moulds today, and when we're using great moulds, it actually covers up quite horrendous work underneath. I love the Quilted one for this because it's so thick and deep as a mould. It really does hide all sorts of sins. It's absolutely brilliant. So we'd give that a good smoothing over, but again, I'm not concerned about the state of it at this stage. I tell you what, the guys in the office certainly aren't concerned about it because they'll just get to delve into it and eat it later on, so they're not bothered what it looks like. As long as it's got ganache on it, they're happy. So as I said, that would basically go in the fridge just to harden, and then we'd use a hot boiling water and just make sure that we'd covered it all over. Look, we've got a little bit of a gap down the bottom, and that it was nice and smooth. So we'll put this to one side. Down here. Do you know, we haven't got any kitchen room. Please may I have? I knew there was going to be something I'd forget, and it's me with dirty chocolatey fingers. So we need to get rid of that one. Thank you so much. Bless her, she didn't want to appear on camera, but she's going to end up doing it anyway. There's nothing worse than trying to deal with some sugar paste when your fingers are absolutely filthy. and I usually have a little cloth attached to my apron. But I was getting distracted with tea and sandwiches because they look after me so well up here. Okay, so here's one that we've made earlier. So I made this about an hour ago. It's not exactly smooth, but as I said, it's going to be fine for our purposes. You see how sturdy this is now? We can actually just kind of, you know, lob this around. Whilst it is cake, it's really nice and sturdy. That handle will go back on as well, should we need to. We can pop that on at any point. And it's probably a good time to check that you can still get the handle back on, and that the clasps are free of cake. So there's a little keyhole hook, basically, and we need to make sure that it's free of cake, basically. If I lift that up that way, I don't know whether you guys can see it, but just in here, basically, where the hole is, it doesn't want to be full of anything, basically. So it's a good time to kind of make sure that that's the case and that you can still get that in and out. So, whilst we're about to start this one, should we show you the finished one and show you what that actually looks like? We'll get that down. Clean off the base. If I'm tall enough to reach, that is. There we go. Okay. So this one was done using the large quilted molds. This one just here. So they do two sizes in this one. They do a large one and a small one. The Continuous Quilts is called. I absolutely love it, and I think it is absolutely born for a handbag. Absolutely made for it. What I love is that the detail and pattern on the sides really does allow you to make it continuous, not just on the sides, but also top and bottom as well, which I think is absolutely perfect. So let's take a look at what we would be doing with both that and what else have we used on it. So I've also used on this one the Purl Border. So I love this one for the detail that's on it. I use it loads and loads and loads. And then also the zip molds. Now you'll notice the zip mold on this one actually opens up in the end, which is really cool, rather like that. But we're going to use it today. The space that we have actually just closed, and then one of the zips as well. And we'll start with the zip actually. Let's just get me... Sorry, I'm trying not to rustle, but I've got everything all wrapped up just as I needed it. I've got a little cornflower bag. So always make sure that you've dusted everything well. So you need to make sure that your mould has got a nice amount of corn flour in it. So you tap that in and then tap that back out onto your surface. If you find you're dealing with something that's a little bit sticky, so some sugar pastes are a bit softer than others, either add some Tylos or CMC, or just pop them in the freezer. So I would make a mould, pop it in the freezer, wait until it's frozen, about 10 minutes, depending on the size of the mould, and then you can pop that out, no bother at all. Now in order to do this one, I've obviously dusted, that's fine, and can you see that I've rolled myself a little sausage of black sugar paste. And I'm going to take my Dresden tool, like so, and I'm just going to place it down inside and pat it, and I only need to go up to that join, don't I? Don't need to go any further than that. And then my little zip, take a ball, and again I'm just going to pat that down in place. The reason I do this for small moulds is that if I were going to try and put a lot on, roll it, and then try and take a knife, it's just going to drag out everything that's in there. Whereas this way round, everything pops out straight away like so. And it's all nice and neat, and none of it needs trimming. Let's just take that little zip out as well, just using the Dresden tool There we go. And again, if you felt that the little fiddly bits were just too soft, pop that in the freezer before you pop it out, and that'll be good to go. So there's my zip. Move that to one side for a minute. I'm going to take enough sugar paste. We're going to work with a brown now. So whilst I know I did that handbag in black, I've got a brown here. It's actually a chocolate paste mixed with some white. I thought we'd have a bit of a different look. So it's a little bit firmer, this one, and I really need to knead it to make sure it's okay. But we'll just put that zip on the top. So rolling pin. And all I'm aiming for now, size-wise, is the top of my handbag. But I want to make the zip look real. Now, if we were making a handbag for real out of material, the zip would be sewn into a piece of material, which is entirely different to just sticking it on the top. So if I were to just place that on the top of there, it's not really going to look like a zip on a piece of material. So I'm actually just going to mark and mark either side where I want it to come out. Place that down, and I'm just going to cut between the two. Use a ruler if you don't think you can cut straight. Do you notice how I finished just short one end? And it's to allow me to get a neat line on both sides. Flip that over, because I just need a tiny little bit of edible glue either side, and I don't want much because otherwise it's only going to give me one shot to get this right. But we should be able to give it a gentle press down. Just readjust if you need to. And what I'm looking at doing is putting that cut line just either side of that zip shape. When you're happy it's in place, give it a gentle push, but don't push the mould because you'll lose all the zip detail. And then with a stitch tool, just give it a little gentle stitch. What you find is if you've not quite got it in the right place, you can use the stitch tool to just either push it closer or push it a little bit further away. But there you've then got a zip inside. So there's the back of it, look. And then the other side has the zip actually inside that piece of material. Okay? You could put an impression of leather on there. You could do all sorts of things. But then very easily I can make sure that that lines up equally spaced either side. Now my ganache is quite hard on this one. So things may not stick too well. I may have to use some glue. Of course, if you'd have put hot boiling water over your cake to smooth it down, then you would have got probably an easier time of it. Just trim that away. The handles, if you've gone a long way past your handles with cake, just take your knife, run it over the top of the handle, and then that will allow you to neatly put it down on the other side of the bag, look. And then you can trim too. Dresden tool if you need to, just to neaten everything off. Cut that bit. Okay, and then I'm just following the line I can see across the top of the cake. Of course you're not fixed to this design at all, but I start with the top because it's going to be the bit that actually is going to look like it's underneath everything else. So we kind of start with the bottom upwards, and I don't mean bottom that way round, I just mean that's been sewn in first and put in place first. So my zip on the top is ready to go, and I would just add that little zip detail. I may paint the other bits as well later. So let me just put that to one side for a minute. And we've got our brown, a bit more. And we've got now our continuous quilt. So, again, cornflower. I would rather over cornflower this, making sure that everything's done and in, than I would find anything was going to stick, because we can get rid of cornflower dead easily. So we've given it a good push in and then a good tap out, and that should be enough for us. Again, I've got to knead this. This is where you see me on my tiptoes. If only you could see behind the counter. You'll see really how short I am. Don't go too thin with this, because it's a really nice deep mould. If you were to go too thin, you'll find that it's quite empty at the back, and the lines on it, the detail lines, are really quite pronounced. And what you don't want to do is lose any of those. So that's actually my better side. I don't know whether you can see, but I've got a couple of bits in here where it's hard, and I should really be pulling them out, but I'm not. So we'll flip it over. That's going to be the side that's going into my mould. So in it goes. I've made sure that when I've rolled it out, it's as big as the mould. And then with my fingers, I'm going to push down. If I were to just go ahead and roll this with the rolling pin, what you'll find is it lifts at the back, scrunches up in the middle, and everything squashes at the other end. And you end up with not a nice pattern, basically, and what I call ghosting. So you can end up with sort of two ridges where you don't want them. So give a good press down first. I then take a smoother and I give it another press down, really making sure that it's all in. Now I can roll over it, and when I roll over it, one, it doesn't move, and two, I'm using it to cut the edges. I'm going to go off the end, and actually look, it'll just cut that edge off. Go off the end and the other side, and you're just taking off some of that excess that you don't need, and it just makes sure that it's nice and even thickness wise all the way around. Give it another going over just for luck. Then we need to cut the detail away. So you'll notice that we were talking about it's got that continuous pattern to it, and you can probably see there is the start of that pattern. Now I cheat and do this quite quickly. If you take your knife at an angle this way so that it's touching one of those points, take it flat and scrape once, what you'll find is that you should cut off both bits at the same time, like so. So rather than doing a V and doing a V, what I don't like to do is use my knife straight down into a mould, because if your knife is really sharp, as it should be, you may end up cutting your mould. And when you've cut it, you can impregnate it then with germs and all sorts. Whereas if you leave it flat, you should be able to just scrape away. A plastic scraper is good for this too. Doesn't need to be a metal knife. In fact, if you cannot use one, all the better. So tidy up any edges by just making sure that they are inside the shape of the mould, like so. And then turn it over. Oh, look at that. Flip it out. Dead easy. Love, love, love this mould. So because you don't really want to see me do that 3 times over, I've made some in advance. I made these about half an hour ago. I've covered them in cling film, so you could do the same thing really if you were at home. Do them all and then try and slot them to what it is that you're doing. So the challenge will be, can I get in the food wrap? Or have I sealed them too well? There we are. Sorry, I'm trying not to rustle too close to the microphone so that that's not all you hear. So we've done them brown this time. I thought that'd be a little bit different because you can appreciate what the black looks like. And we've done brown because I'd like to show you a little bit of airbrush detail on them as well. Now, as I've said, this cake is really pretty solid and set and dry. The ganache is quite dry. So I do need to wet this over with some glue. If you don't want to use loads of glue, you could be just using a water. You could use a piping gel. Apricot jam works really well. I haven't decided which one is the front and which one is the back, but if I do this way, you might be able to see what it is that I'm up to. I'm not worried about too much, but again, if I'd go too thin here with my mould, that's when you're starting to place it on the side of a cake, you can find that it'll just disappear and you can't see anything. Right, hopefully you can kind of see the side from this angle. Okay, so just placing that on like so, you can see, hopefully, from where you are, that it doesn't quite cover the sides, doesn't quite cover the bottom, and doesn't quite join at the top, and I'm happy with that. I'm trying to make sure that the point of each of these little squares, these diamonds, touches the top, and then we're sort of good to go, basically. It's then a matter of joining the next one to it, and honestly, this mould is so fab for this. Let me put some more glue down. The great thing is if you ended up, because of the funny shape of it, with a square just in the middle that wasn't reaching and wasn't doing anything, you can just cut from this and make it join. It is absolutely perfect for this. Really, really good. We've gone with a piece over the front in the middle. We could have put our join in the middle. That wouldn't have mattered at all. So I'm going to place this next one on and find where it fits best, which I think is about there. So give that a squeeze and a mould. See how I'm just gently manipulating it? It was wide at the top there for a second. Let's gently peel that off and join it back again at the front. There we are. And the great thing is about doing all of it in one go is that you really can manipulate it where it needs to be. It may well be that you decide, can you see how I go halfway? There's my side of my cake and it goes halfway, but look how far down it comes because of the way round that I've gone. If I pulled it up like I just had it, it opened up a hole at the front, which obviously we don't want. So what you could do with this is just cut it, pick a row, don't cut it in a straight line, cut it on those diamonds, and peel that one away, because that then I can add easier. I can match it up with odd little bits and pieces. When it gets to the bottom, again, I'm just going to trim for the moment, always paying attention to those diamond lines, but I'm now going to take that in half. And I'm going to end up with lots of half little diamonds. So can you see here, this one just here, if I cut that in half, I can now just add that to the top like so. And again, then the other half, add to the top like so. It's so easy to knit this cake together, it's not true. You can't muck it up, basically. In fact, I might let my kids loose on this one. I'm that confident that they wouldn't make a mess. So simple to use. So whilst I've got a bit that's left over here, if I put this on this side, it'll at least give us the impression that our cake is sort of finished. I would do exactly the same with those half diamonds, so the triangles that you have left at the bottom of your cake as well. So I just tuck in with a knife so that I know it's all smooth, and then anything, you lift it up, anything that's missing on this bottom row here, can you see? We can literally do the same thing again, look, and fill it the other way round and just fill those in like so, and that would be finished. Just make sure that everything's joined. Right, let me look at this cake from the front. Okay, so hopefully that gives you a great idea as to how easy it is to be doing something really effective but very simple. We've not even been on air yet for 3/4 of an hour, and already we have carved, ganached, and pretty much almost covered one cake straight away. So really simple. The other detail then that we used was the Purl Border. And on this, I've used it as like a fake chain, like it would be something that you'd pick up the cake by. And that was using this Purl Border. So let me show you that. We put the handle in that one, and when I get the airbrush out in a minute, I'll show you how we can add a little bit more pizzazz and detail to that one. She says if I can just get the handle back in and there. Right. So, the Purl Border is this one. Again, it's one of my absolute favourites. I use this loads and loads in class. I use it on the bottoms of a cake instead of ribbon. I use it for things like these handbags and ornate detail. I'll also show you how we've used it on the round one here. So on this is the round base. And this is again 4 layers of cake, literally just cut to a 7-inch round. The handle, as you know, goes on the top like so that we can pick that one up and carry it. I've just popped some flowers in here. Could you imagine the pro flower in the top of this one? And I've used, can you see, I've used the Purl Border just here on the front look. So exactly the same thing. I've used the larger one in the string, top and bottom. And then I've used the smaller one in the string just to make a heart. So I'll go through that in a mo. But let's just take a look then at this Purl Border. So I've got a couple that we've done already. Like so. And again, these just pop out really easily. There it is. And can you spot, if I move everything else out of the way, can you spot that this one's white in the middle? Now, on the cake that I've done previously, I've airbrushed those in silver, but actually you could put yourself a blob of white first. I love the fact that these have got 2 different sizes in them as well. Really helpful. So I'm only on a pea size, but if you just pop that in the centre just there, it may not stay very well if you've really dusted with the corn flour, but that's okay. Pop another one in just there. You could of course use a large druggy. What I worry about is that they're quite weighty, so when you come to pull everything out, they'll just pop straight back off again. But of course, I mean, you could do it in one colour, it's absolutely fine. And then again, I'm going to take a sausage, give it a roll, and this is really good, a good way of getting everything in nice and neat. So I'll just do these ones where we've done the middle, and I'm just pressing in with the Dresden tool, making sure that it's nice and neat around the edges, that it's not going over any of the edges. You can push that in a little bit firmer with your finger. If you've not got enough, just squish it back. Look, you can add more to this, it doesn't matter. If it doesn't finish, it might well break when you come to take it out, but you just put them back together again. It's absolutely fine. So whilst I know I've not gone all the way along, but pop that one out again, really nice and simple. But you can end up, look, with a pearl in the center, which means that you could pearlize that, paint the outside in gold, make them look nice in different colors and really quite ornate. So I've used those for the front of this bag, as I said, just to make it look like that's a separate handle. And then for the love heart on this one, I've just done this by eye. If you're worried about sticking something to the front of a cake and making a bit of a mess because it's not the right shape, then don't panic. Here it is. Don't panic. Use a heart-shaped cookie cutter and just impress that into the front of the cake first, and then that gives you a good guide to go from. But I've basically just cut up some strips. If I can unravel it, there we are. So I generally find when I do it that it takes more than one, just more than one, like about 1.5, to go from a strip, and I cut it at the bottom and I cut it where those two join in order that you still get a nice heart shape, and then just infill those two and then glue that onto the cake. And again, don't worry about the corn flour now, because we can get rid of all of that, or we could be painting inside the centers, making that look all nice and ornate, and then simply gluing that to the surface of the cake. Easy peasy. I just think it looks lovely, because people will think, oh, how have you done that? That's really quite ornate. But it's actually about using a mold in a different way. Instead of, oh, there's a strip, I'll always use it in a strip. You'll notice, I'll let you into a little secret. Can you see that there is a heart in the centre? I'm looking to the side so I can see what I'm seeing on the camera. And then there's a little one at the bottom. That was because I thought I'd put it up too high and I needed to infill the space. Just a little secret, because I did it by eye. If I'd have used a cookie cutter first, I'd have got a really good balance of, yeah, that's the centre, but I just went for it. But there's always something you can do to disguise what it is that you've done wrong. That's the makings of a good cake decorator. Did you know? It's not about the skill that you have, it's about the ability to cover your mistakes. And that's what I'm pretty good at, is covering my mistakes. So that is the heart. Before we get the airbrush out, let's take a look at the rectangular one. So let me put this one back. That one went up there, like so. That one, I think this one's gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous for Valentine's Day. You could put some roses in here. In fact, share your pictures, guys. If you do something like this with the roses in, or it could be the piped buttercream flowers, all sorts of things. Share it with us. But also Mother's Day, could be an Easter basket, or it could be all sorts of things. But I think that one's really pretty. I show it on the packaging as a paint can, done for a, you know, sort of a more masculine cake, but equally pretty with flowers. So we'll put that one back up there. And then this one. This one is the big heavy one, because it is 3 layers of 10-inch by 6-inch cake. So it is a pretty hefty beast, this one. But as you can see, we can still pick that up. And you'll notice that the handle looks a little bit different on this one. And all I've done, if I can unclip it, move that to one side, all I've done is covered it in string. So I've taken a piece of string, I've secured it by wrapping and wrapping and wrapping and wrapping and wrapping, and then at the other end I've tucked it with a needle or even your Dresden tool, and I've poked the other end look inside. So it's in there and poked inside, and just covers it up. You could cover these handles with a chocolate paste or a sugar paste, just give them at least 48 hours to go hard. You could cover them with a pretty patterned wallpaper or crafting paper so that they match any detail that you've got. Or you could, of course, if you're doing a fancy schmancy handbag, why not replace it with jewellery wire and then thread it with beads, and it would look as equally pretty. The only thing obviously you've got to watch is that the tensile breaking weight of any wire that you choose needs to be strong enough to take the weight of your cake. Most things will tell you on the packaging what it is that they will hold, but also triple and quadruple that up and then feed your beads over the top. So we'll put that back in there. Again, I've shown this one on the packaging as a toolbox for a more DIY kind of style cake. I've also done it previously with chocolate beer bottles in, looking like a crate of beer with a packet of crisps or some nachos. That's pretty cool. But I thought it'd be nice to show it as a baby shower cake. Because Katy Sue has got some most incredible knitted moulds. And then these. I love these. A little shout out as well to my, I want to say 11-year-old, but he's 12 in a couple of weeks, so he'll shout at me if I don't say 12. But Matthew made these animals that are on top of here. He wants to help me over the weekend and saw these moulds and thought how cute they were, which is really cool. And I think he's done an amazing job. So let's talk you through those. So here are the different ones that there are. So there's a lion, there is a teddy bear, there is a monkey, there is an elephant, and I've got down here the giraffe, which is the one that we're going to show you now. So they really are very, very easy to use. If you want to keep them for a side of a cake, make sure that they're nice and flush with the surface. But we're actually going to turn these a little bit 3D. So we're going to make them proud, and this is what I mean. I've got some lighter brown colour here for the nose. So I've dusted my mould again, as you'd expect, which is why it's not sticking, which is what we want. So just carefully tuck that in with the Dresden. Doesn't matter how many sort of poke marks you've made on the back, because no one's going to see it. Make sure it's all in and that it's neat. Then let's do the same. Oh, we've got a hand in the air. Is that a question?
Yes, it is. I've got Jane asking, what size cake does the round kit use?
Okay, so the round kit is about a 7-inch round. And I usually go with about 4 layers of cake. So you've got a hefty cake there. It's certainly going to feed 25 to 30 people. The rectangular one is just over 10 inches by 6 inches, and I usually do that with 3 layers. And the handbag is a 9-inch by 6-inch oval, and again that's 4 layers of cake there. So they're all pretty hefty sizes and going to feed lots of people. Obviously the largest is that rectangular one. I'm just pushing some darker brown in and just making sure that we've done the little horns and the hair. And then I'm going to need the yellow colour. And making sure that I push that down into the head first. So give it a really, really good shove. If you need to use your Dresden, use your Dresden. I just think it's a great way of getting everything in where you need it to be without using that knife and sort of pulling it all back out again. Down into the body. You see how I'm ending up with a much bigger clump? I'm going to split it for the legs. So I'm pushing it down both ways. Now you'd spend far more time making sure it was sort of neater at the back, but it is the back. I don't suppose anybody's really looking. I'm going to take off a good chunk of this excess, not going to need that. But can you see how I have still left a fair whack at the back? And it's because I want to give him a bottom. So he should sit now, look. Can you see how I've gone into a triangle? Again, you could move that a little bit further up, look, if I need it to come up towards the head and give him a bit of a back of a head. Just take the time to make sure that it's not overlapping, because that's when you'll get a seam down the side. Another question.
Yeah, got Jane again. She's asking, if you were making cake for a customer, would you ask for the kit back or would you incorporate it into the price of the cake?
To be fair, it works either way. So, if you imagine that the kits, when they're full price, are £15, so you've got that £3 off voucher making it 12. Where else are you going to make a cake that you can carry for £12 support? If you've got to go to a hardware store or whatever, you're making stuff that's not food safe, you've also got the time element involved. So actually, just charge £12. There's always a cost involved with the cake. That could be your eggs, your flour, your box, your board, your ribbon, let alone your time. So all of that is a cost. And you never see your box, your board, your ribbon, any of that again. You cost that up as part of the cake and off it goes. So why not do the same with these kits? Add the £12, we're not talking about a £25 cake, are we? We're hoping, guys, you're going to charge a little bit more for that. If it's friends or family, however, of course, get it back, reuse it, reuse it, reuse it, reuse it. So it's also great for hobby bakers. If you're just making cakes for friends and family, get those bits back, and then you're good to go for another few cakes yet. Now then, can you see on the back, look here, how I've made him sit proud? So he's got extra, look, and that just helps with the back of the body. We'll just gently start pushing him out. See if he'll come. The nose is a little bit soft, bless him. There was me pushing it all in, making sure it'd all come out. So with these, I would probably put these in the freezer for a little while, but you can see then out it comes. Now can you see, look, this is where I left too much excess. Can you see all of that excess that's there? Which we can just cut off, it's no problem. But if we'd have spent more time making sure that it fitted in the mould nice and neatly, then we wouldn't have had any of those. Now you'll find there's no eyes, so they've thought about these moulds. And we put the eyes in later on. And then I will be using an edible pen. So these are also on my website. These are by Fractal. And they're absolutely perfect. So this, bearing in mind how soft this sugar paste is, but I can literally colour it in like I'm using a paintbrush. So we can colour all the details in. They do 12 different colours. This brown is one of them. I'll be using the black for the eyes. But really, really easily you can airbrush, you can put the pen on all these details, and then I'll airbrush the details on the cheeks in just a mo. But they go together so easy. So there's lots, I've used all of the animals in here. You don't just have to use the whole animal. You could, for instance, the bear and the monkey, just take the top half and have the top half poking out the top of the cake. As I said, you can use them on the sides of the cake. They're really good for that because they've got that nice flat back to them. Another couple of things with this cake is the knitting. So I've used, there's 3 types of knit. There's a knitting, there's a cable knit, and then there's a schmocking, which always sounds rather fun. Not quite sure what that is, but it's very pretty. And I've used those here in different ways, and then I've cut them up ready to go look in squares. So let me very, very quickly show you how I do that. I think the one that we've not used is the blue on this one. So again, depending on how soft your sugar paste is, make sure that your mat has had a good dusting over. And then again, I don't roll this one. I find if you roll it, I spoil the image because it just all scrunches up and everything goes out the other end. So I press it down and then I use a smoother. Now the question?
Yeah, I've got a red. And they're asking what brand is the gum paste or fondant that you're using?
So this is all Renshaw's. The pre-coloured. I like it's ready to go. I use all sorts of different sugar pastes. That's how easily that one comes off, look. So you see I pressed it with the smoother instead of rolling it, and it meant that I got a really nice detailed design. I'm then going to cut around the edges of that. And what I love about this is that they've really thought about the size, and it just makes great 2-inch squares. Now you could measure this with a ruler. It's part of the reason that I do use a gridded board, so that I can measure everything that I've got and make sure that it's all okay. And then the back of the cake here, look, unfinished, but you can see it's cake, for me to place those bits in place. Now I would start with the middle. So let's say that here is my middle, and I would start with a join in the middle. So basically like so. So one there, then one there, and layer it. Let me just show you on the mat so that you can see where we're going with it. When I lift off, look, can you see how I'm using a knife to scrape underneath? I'm not picking at it and destroying the pattern. But I would place, there was my middle, there's the line, and go one side of the line. Then in another colour, I could line up. And I would use a knife on the cake too, to make sure that everything basically is nice and straight. I'm sorry, I'm rustling again. See if we can get in it. So like so, pick a square that might actually be the same size. Now it doesn't matter which way around these go either, look. So it could be that your lines are going straight down, but butt everything up together when you're doing it. And do it again when they're all soft, because it does give you very gentle tugging maneuver. If they're hard and they're not square, you've had it. If you know that they're exactly spot on, there's no problem. When I do this cake and I end up with little bits like here that just aren't quite joined, then I will quite often, she says, take my Dresden and I put just little cross marks. You see how it pushes down the sugar paste to make it join, and it just gives that extra little bit of detail and just means that there's a neat join to it instead of it didn't quite go together. So I would lay that then around the rest of the cake, and that one is so easy to build up because you get 4 squares out of each stencil, mat rather, then it builds up really, really quickly. The button detail, you'll notice that on the cake, oh, this cake is so heavy, that my buttons are all different colours. So all of this is done in a different colour. I'll show you in a moment how we could airbrush that up. So I've done one that's just in white. But just like we did the little nose for our giraffe, and like we did the little pearls in the middle of that purl border, then what we've actually done here is just take a selection of colours, and I'm literally just going to pop a bit in place like so. What I do one colour first, so I might do all the green, making sure that they're evenly spaced, then I'll come back and do the blue, the pink, and so on, and then I've backed the whole thing in a sausage of yellow in exactly the same way that I did those Purl Borders. I nearly said Purl Borders. I don't know who Purl Borders is. Purl Borders. So give it a little roll out first to make sure that it's flat. You would have obviously filled in all of those buttons. I don't fill in the little pearly bits. Can you see there's little balls here? I only do the buttons. And again, make sure that we're down flat. This one's easy to roll because it's not going anywhere. And again, if you roll nice and firmly, can you see how it just trims it all for you? So use that edge to trim. I have a knife somewhere. Here it is. And then out it comes, and you'll see there, look. So you can see, look, how easy it is to do those little coloured buttons. More questions? There are people out there.
I've got Rev again, and
hello,
asking where do you get the mat from?
This green mat, so it's just from any crafting store. It's not particularly meant for cakes, but what I love about it is that when I'm trying to do something precise, particularly quilting, when it needs to be spot on, then I can actually use this mat as part of my ruler, part of my cutting guide, to know that I've cut things straight. So really, really useful for that. So that's what you would be doing with that purl, that button border, just making those little bits in different colours, so that all goes together. Let's have a touch of a tidy up, because we'll do some airbrushing. Shall we do some airbrushing? Let's just put all of this away. And is the airbrush, oh, the airbrush is on. That's always a good sign. So of course it isn't essential either to be airbrushing everything. You could be dusting, you could be doing them in the colours that you want them already. But I think sometimes, even if I've airbrushed in a particular colour, then it's nice to add some detail with enhancing it with some airbrushing. So I'm just going to put down a couple of bits of kitchen paper. Now the guys at Katy Sue here are a little nervous that I might make a mess. But rest assured, if you're airbrushing in the right place, then you won't make a mess. Honest. So let's just put him up there. And we'll airbrush a bit of this one. Oh yes, more questions.
I've got Caroline, she's asking, how do you get the discount code for your kit? For
my kit, so it's Katy Sue, all one word. I think it's all in capitals as well. And if you add that at the coupon section on the checkout, then it should take your £3 off each of your kits. If you're having any struggles with it, any worries at all, then just send an email, dawn@dinkydoodle.co.uk, and I can manually sort out all sorts of other things for you later on. For instance, what I don't know is whether the discount code allows you to get £3 off 3 kits, therefore taking more money off, or whether it just gives you £3 off for the whole 3 kits. And obviously I'd like to give £3 off per kit, because I'm good like that. So yeah, any issues at all, just drop me an email and we can sort through those later. So let's see if our airbrush is clean. Probably not, is the answer. Oh, it's had a little bit of something in there. And I'm going to go with, talk amongst yourselves whilst I'm down here. There we go. So I'm going to go with a fractal colour. This is a water-based, and it's called a dark chocolate brown, which I think is pretty perfect for this cake. The other reason that I put down some kitchen roll is that I use that as my walk on, walk off. When I say walk on, walk off, what I mean is that I always start my airbrushing off the project. I check my colour, check that it's working, check that I'm happy before moving on to the cake. Okay, so I'm going to have to do this so it's facing me, and what we're going to do is go nice and close, and we're going to just airbrush up these lines. So really easy to follow, goes together very quickly. Hoping you can see what it is that I'm doing now. I wish that I could tilt this backwards. Hang on 1 second. There you are, look, I told you this cake was robust. How's about that? You can see now, look, where I've not put all the detail in the bottom. But of course you'd spend far more time doing all of that. So airbrushing is something that's feared by most people, I think, and I don't know why, because honestly, I wouldn't be doing it if it wasn't easy. It just depends on 2 variables. Variable number 1 is how far away I am from my project. So if I'm a good distance away, and I'll show you properly in a minute when I'm not airbrushing this, then I would get a really wide spray and I'd be able to cover my cake in one go. If I go close to the cake like I am doing now, then basically I will get a nice fine line, and it allows me to have control and do things like this. So we can just add some detail there, like so. Let's have a go at doing the top. I think we'll just go around these edges here. So yeah, let me show you on this bit of paper. So a good distance away, look, can you see my sprays wide and close to a fine line? Okay, so the further I am away, the wider they are, and the closer I am, the finer I am. That's coupled with the other variant of how much I pull back the trigger. If I'm a good distance away, I can afford to pull the trigger all the way back and just get on with colouring the cake. If I'm close, however, I'll make a mess. So you need to just get a hang of those 2 variables, and the way to do that is to get yourself a cheap children's colouring book, basically. Because if you can colour within the lines, your hand-eye coordination on the distance you are away from your project versus where you're aiming for is spot on. And if you can keep the page dry, then you're not giving the cake too much welly with too much trigger. Once you've worked your way through the colouring book, there'll be nothing that you can't achieve with the airbrush. And how easy is that, look, to just add a little bit of detail to that cake. And just, I was going to say, just to show you that we can do nice lots of little fine detail. I know I've got brown in the airbrush, but there's no reason why we can't have brown buttons. But look, if I stay nice and close, make sure that my airbrush is behaving itself, then look, you can actually aim for just the button that you want, look. It does take a little bit of practice. I would be doing exactly the same with the little rosy cheeks on the animals, by coming nice and close, nice and gentle. My trigger, my hand on the trigger is probably coming back just a millimetre. That is it, no more than that. And whilst I know these are all brown, the point is, can you see that if you got yourself a colouring book, then how easy would it be to colour all those in? Take a look at this piece of kitchen paper as an example, and take a look at the pattern on it. This is a really good practice for can I colour in the lines. And again, if you can keep the kitchen paper dry and aim within the lines, then there's nothing that you can't achieve with an airbrush. So it's so simple. We've done just about an hour and a half and we've made 3 cakes. Yeah, 3 cakes, all of which you can pick up and carry. Moulds make it so much more easier to do, and don't think of them as cheating. Think of them as using your imagination. So yes, Katy Sue have given you those designs and tools to go with, but it's what you do with them that then counts. So like putting that pearl border, turning it into a heart shape, using the quilted one they've got, not on a 6-inch round, but of course where it belongs, on that handbag. And you really will wow everybody by the fact that you can pick that up and take that to the party. I've had an absolute ball. Thank you so much to Katy Sue for inviting me. There'll be loads and loads of questions pop up. And of course you'll be getting hold of this later and watching it again, where I can be in touch and answer any more of your questions too. Don't forget that Katy Sue have got that PDF handout for you on their website, along with a bundle offer they've done. So they have done an offer, is it $29.95? I think it's got an RRP of 45 quid. But the offer, if I bring this one down. So the bundle offer they've done, folks, is the large continuous quilt and the zip and the Purl Border for...
the RRP is $42.95 and our offer price is $29.98.
Go get it now. Do they need to put a code in? Is there something they're looking for on the website?
In the link on
so it's
website.
Just in the link on the website. Guys, go and check that out. And of course, if you want to use these handbag kits, you can get them directly from my website, www.dinkydoodle.co.uk. I've been Dawn Butler. Thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure.